At this point in history, 2024 is make or break for this country. I'm not running to be president. I'm running to do something as president for the country.
Make or break? It's hard not to agree. But how about that quote? I'm not running to be president. I'm running to do something as president for the country. Respect.
So why a driving range? Well, I've been feeling that make or break feeling for a while now. And many days it doesn't seem appropriate to put time into an activity that I'll only be using in the make it scenario. If we make it, I feel like I'm going to be playing a lot of golf. You know, the good life, prosperity. If we don't, well, let me put it this way. I will not be eating the bugs. Sorry, Klaus. But doing the research for this video has given me a feeling of optimism. So let's get into it. As an independent journalist who prides himself on transparency, I have to be honest here. I have a very positive bias towards Ron DeSantis. Why? Well, at the height of the global health crisis, I was living in California, a state that, in my opinion, had gone completely crazy. During that difficult time, I saw the governor's actions in Florida as a beacon of hope. I remember when everything was locked down, taking a trip to Indio with some friends. Now, that's a town that's a little bit off the beaten path. And on that trip, I got a taste of sanity for the first time in a while. I expressed that feeling in this social media post. And as you can see, although I was in Cali, I had Florida on my mind. We all have a value that serves as our North Star when evaluating a leader. And mine is individual liberty. So I've been asking myself, who is the most freedom-friendly candidate in this 2024 presidential race? Now, that clip we saw was from a recent interview with Megyn Kelly, which I highly recommend you check out. I've been reviewing a lot of content from all of the candidates, speeches, interviews, articles, documentary stuff, you name it. In addition to answering my stated question, I've come to one overarching conclusion. I still genuinely appreciate Ron DeSantis. However, and we'll get to that in a moment, for now, I'll answer this. Is that, however, enough to lose my support for his presidential run? No, and I'll tell you why. Because there's another issue so important it could single-handedly sway my vote. In my estimation, it's the single biggest threat to freedom of our time. And on that issue, Ron DeSantis has been taking the lead. That being said, when all of my analysis is said and done, will he prevail as the most freedom-friendly candidate in the race? Welcome back to Shadow Wreckardz, where we believe that independent journalism can rescue the world from the scourge of globalist-controlled media. Before I start, I want to point out that I'm only comparing him to presidential candidates that I could actually see myself voting for in some hypothetical scenario. My number one criteria for that is that they don't appear to me to be completely controlled by the swamp, or more accurately, the powers that control the swamp. Now, that list currently includes Donald Trump, Vivek Ramaswamy, Democrat Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and yes, the governor of the great state of Florida, Ron DeSantis. If you think there's a candidate not on this list who I should be considering, please let me know in the comments. I notice he's been getting a lot of bad press lately, which tells me he must be doing something right. They always attack the threats. So allow me to quickly highlight a few of the things I like about Ron DeSantis, a few things I think are fake or unjustified criticisms. Spoiler alert, this guy's far from boring.
We never did this through all of human history until 2 weeks ago. Now this is something. They're having third graders declare pronouns. We're not doing the pronoun Olympics in Florida.
Come on, quips like that? And finally, what I believe is the one position that could feasibly gain my support, despite that, however, that I will have to call out at the end. As governor of Florida, he was one of the quickest to reopen his state during the global health crisis, despite intense political and media pressure. He banned mask mandates, banned firing people for shot status. He's fought against the indoctrination of children, banning the Marxist-inspired critical race theory from schools, and removing books and course materials that expose children to inappropriate sexual content. He's worked hard to protect parents' rights. When the Disney Corporation threatened to use their power to combat these efforts, he took them on as well. And he won. He's expressed repeatedly a strong belief in individual liberties and our Constitution, and he's had a lot of success. He won his first election for governor by a single point, his second by 20. So not only is he getting a lot of bold things done, but the voters like it, and they're rewarding him for it. Which brings me to what I like most about Ron DeSantis. He stands up for regular citizens, and he sticks to his guns.
And that's all helping make Florida one of the strongest, if not the strongest state in the country. When the world went crazy, when common sense suddenly became an uncommon virtue, the state of Florida stood as a refuge of sanity, as a citadel of freedom for people.
Again, this resonates. His pushback was a beacon of hope for many of us at that time.
And if you were here, you didn't necessarily know there was a pandemic going on.
There's definitely truth to that. If you meet people who experienced the health crisis from Florida, they seem way less traumatized than those of us who experienced it from a blue state.
So that really, I think, led the way, not just for the state of Florida, but also for the country and for the United States. At the time, everything we were doing in Florida, we were getting attacked. We were getting attacked by bureaucrats like Fauci. We were being attacked by the political left. We were being attacked by corporate media. And we were even attacked by some Republicans. I mean, that's just kind of the way it goes. But we stuck to our guns because we believed that we were doing the right thing for the state.
To see an elected official not cave to one of those political pressure points, the opposition party, the media, his own party, it's extremely rare. Politicians promise a lot, but few can deliver in the face of intense opposition. And it was intense. I mean, at one point, those nutjobs on The View were calling him DeSantis.
I hope it's not DeSantis over in Florida because I think he's a fascist. DeSantis. I think he handled COVID miserably.
A moment that outed them as not only nasty, but completely clueless. Florida ended up having one of the more impressive records regarding the health crisis. And according to CNBC, they now have the #1 economy in the country. You hear that? I apologize, but even after small doses of The View, I need to clear my mind. One moment. DeSantis showed impressive resolve throughout all of this. I remember when Barack Obama promised to end all of the wars, but under establishment pressure, he did the exact opposite, expanding our war footprint. DeSantis has shown that even in the face of pressure from all sides, he can get it done. Now, the major criticisms leveled at him by the left are the same silly, unfounded, usual suspects that they've grown so fond of. Racism.
Right here in Florida, they plan to teach students that enslaved people benefited from slavery.
That was Vice President Kamala Harris, who flew down to Florida to make a massive spectacle of criticizing their new history curriculum. Here's what DeSantis had to say.
Well, those standards were developed by African American history scholars. Many of them themselves were black. And the point about developing skills was those skills were developed in spite of slavery, not because of slavery. And this was all done in public. It wasn't political. Like, we didn't tell them what to do. We said, we're not doing critical race. We're not doing a political agenda. Just do the facts. I mean, this stuff was vetted. This was all public. People could do comments. Everyone was praising what a thorough job they did. Then all of a sudden they cherry pick something, take it out of context, and then try to demagogue it. Because if you look at the entire standards, there is no way you can view those standards and not come to any other conclusion that they are very, very honest about the injustice of slavery.
And here's one of the folks who worked on that curriculum, Dr. William B. Allen, a member of Florida's African American History Standards Work Group.
A diverse group of professionals gets together and to come up with this thoughtful curriculum. And it's to the point where you have the Vice President of the United States making an emergency trip down to Jacksonville, Florida, to condemn it.
My reaction was incredulousness. I couldn't believe, but then I came to understand this really had nothing to do with the standards. It has everything to do with the larger agenda, starting with the teachers' union and their allies. And of course, carrying it to the level of the vice presidency in order to give it heft. So this agenda is to not just to affect the teaching of African American history, but to continue to impose a mantle on the entire country that accounts for slavery as the soul of America and discounts the accomplishments of America. That's what it's about.
Look, history is what it is. Is war hell? Many would say, yeah, of course it is. But can you find a picture somewhere of someone hiding in a foxhole, smiling? Probably. If you put that picture in a history book, are you saying that war is good? I don't think so. Again, it is what it is. While it's true that all we really have of history is a narrative, we should try not to warp that narrative to suit our own political agenda. And Vice President Harris, I mean, come on. This is one of our leaders. Do you think she was being genuine in that moment? You be the judge.
I think the thing that's instructive, though, is, okay, you have Harris doing this in Biden's White House. Corporate media, if they're really truth tellers, if they're about holding the powerful accountable, they would have pushed back on this. They would have said, wait a minute, that's not true. They would have had Dr. Allen on to shoot it down, and instead they try to concoct the narrative even further and push it. So I think people like Harris do it because they know they can get away with it with a lot of our corporate press.
Next suspect. He's anti-LGBTQ.
No gender ideology or any of that in the schools. And to me, that was not a huge leap. I mean, that's common sense. Why would you want to tell a second grader that they may have been born in the wrong body? That is happening around this country, and we said in Florida we're not.
Many of us see this as common sense protection of children. Kids are impressionable. Stop messing with their heads. To this criticism, I would say, you can't please everyone. Now, the criticisms by the right, I've heard boring. This one I've never understood, and I suspect it's a completely contrived narrative. First off, we're not casting for a TV show here. We're looking for a leader. During the health crisis, I thought he was the most exciting politician out there. To me, boring is someone who doesn't push back on the establishment, doesn't take action, and doesn't fight for the people. We've seen the exact opposite from this guy at every turn. He handles a combative press brilliantly and doesn't flinch in the face of pressure.
Excuse me.
If I could finish my question.
You just said what has gone wrong, so I'm answering the question. So you're going to give a speech or you're going to ask a question? Because you got a lot of people in your profession who waxed poetically for weeks and weeks about how Florida was going to be just like New York. Well, hell, we're 8 weeks away from that, and it hasn't happened.
There's nothing boring about that in my book. And hey, Megyn Kelly got to spend some time with him and his wife, and she had pretty high praise.
I will tell you that he's extremely knowledgeable about every single issue that I teed up to him. I mean, there was no issue on which he couldn't go 10 deep. It's interesting to listen to him fight that fight and explain himself, not just once, but go the next layer. And he can do that on everything. And I will tell you this too, he's funny. He was doing impressions that had us in hysterics. Like, I had never seen that side of him.
Now, there's also been some criticism from Donald Trump that he's a globalist rhino. This concerned me at first, especially coming from Trump, who was such a rhino killer. But when I look at his record, it just doesn't add up. Not at all. Again, he's been against the Marxist-inspired critical race theory. I mean, that's something the globalists have been pushing. They're the ones pushing this equity and inclusion stuff. Removing the sexual content from schools, thus thwarting the whole transgender movement. Another globalist favorite. Fought lockdowns, banned mask mandates, banned shot mandates, fought censorship. These are all actions that are against globalist interests. And we haven't even gotten to the biggest one. So where is he aligned with globalists? I really need Trump to explain that. Otherwise, it's just name calling. Now, I can think of perhaps one issue that, however, that we're going to talk about shortly, Trump has also called him disloyal. Here's what DeSantis had to say about that.
It's interesting. He doesn't say that about his own vice president running against him. He doesn't say that about his ambassador to the UN running against him. He doesn't say that about other people he endorsed in the past who are now running against him. He only says it about me because I think he construes me as the only threat to his winning the nomination. You know, I'm loyal to my family, I'm loyal to our Constitution, and I'm loyal to God. I think I'm the guy that can win the primary, win the general election, and then deliver on all of these things and do it for 2 terms, which I think is really important because if you look Trump's first term, he did a lot of good things. Biden reversed almost everything on day 1. I think you do need 2 terms for this stuff to really, really stick. And so I think that I'm the only guy that fits that bill. So I have a responsibility to step up and offer myself for service.
Offer myself for service. Love that choice of words, and I believe it's sincere. What do I think about the recent coverage suggesting his campaign is not going well? I actually think that shows that the establishment sees him as a major threat. They always steer the masses towards the establishment candidates and away from those they see as a threat to the status quo. So if the media is being nice to someone, it means they're establishment friendly. It's amazing how well their technique works. Even people who know the corporate media is largely dishonest get caught up in the latest disappointing poll or article suggesting the campaign is a disaster. My suggestion, ignore that stuff. It's a steering narrative. How many times have we seen the polls be completely off? That's no accident.
Going forward. And I would also just note, Jake, there is a narrative that they're almost trying a little too hard with this to try to say, because they've been saying that I've been doing poorly for my whole time as governor, basically. This is always the case during COVID. Oh, you know, he has the state open, he's going to lose. Then he fought Disney, he's going to lose, and then this. So they always want to get there. It never quite works out. And in fact, I actually remember you did the debate with us in 2018.
Sure.
And before we did the debate on CNN, and you didn't have anything to do with this, CNN released a poll saying I was down like 14 or 15 points. Now, that was the narrative at the time. He's going down. So I think some of this is motivated reasoning.
They know that people hate to be on the losing team. So they make it look like the candidate they want to sabotage is going to lose. It's a very effective technique that they use on both parties. You've seen it. So-and-so is unelectable because that just means they don't want that person to get elected. They steered the Dems away from Tulsi Gabbard. And in 2016 and 2020, they steered the Dems away from a very popular Bernie Sanders. And as for the stories about his donors complaining, for all we know, they have globalist interests as well. The fact that they're frustrated might suggest he's not for sale. Now you might be wondering why they're giving the Trump campaign such positive coverage. After all, they really hate him. But all we keep hearing is how far ahead he is of every other candidate. It's the only positive coverage he gets. Perhaps they think they can take care of him with one of these indictments. So you build up the Trump campaign and then knock him out with the weaponized justice system while simultaneously knocking out DeSantis with bad press. What Republican is left from an outside the swamp perspective? Vivek Ramaswamy. Awesome candidate who I really like. Probably the most aligned with my values. Based on the way he's being treated, I'm guessing they don't see him as a major threat just yet. Once they do, they'll go at him hard as well. And I mean with the nasty stuff. He's getting there, so we'll have to watch out for that and see how he does. But let's get to that freedom impacting issue I mentioned at the beginning.
So how concerned are you that in the wake of whatever the next economic disruption that we're going to face is, and everyone kind of feels like maybe there's something coming, that will wind up with digital currency issued by the central bank?
Well, if I am the president on day 1, we will nix central bank digital currency. Done, dead, not happening in this country. In the state of Florida, because the Fed has been talking about this.
Oh, yeah.
And what the Fed said was, well, you know, we wouldn't do it without consulting the legislative and executive branches. Ideally, we would get a law passed. No. That's not how the Constitution says. It's only ideal that you get a law passed. You would have to get a law passed. I don't think Congress would pass that. So I think the Fed may try to do something unilaterally. So what we did in Florida is we basically passed a law that says we do not recognize CBDC in the state of Florida. And I think other states are probably going to follow suit. That will jam their ability to do it through executive action. They don't have authority to do it. There'd be lawsuits and everything. For those who don't know what CBDC is, what they want to do, and this is tied in with like Davos, World Economic Forum, all these people. They want the Fed, they want to get rid of cash. They want no cryptocurrency, and they want this to be the sole form of legal tender. And they have said this publicly at like Davos and these other places. It will allow them to prohibit, quote, undesirable purchases like fuel and ammunition. And so the minute you give them the power to do this, they are going to impose a social credit system on this country. CBDC is a massive threat to American liberty. On January 20th, 2025, it goes to the ash heap of history in this country.
The ash heap of history. Nothing globalist about that. I'm not going to spend time explaining what a central bank digital currency is. I think Ron DeSantis covered it well enough. If you're not familiar, I hope it is now on your radar. It has the potential to have a greater impact on future liberty than any other issue. That's why it could single-handedly sway my vote. Now, he's not the only candidate who's articulated a position against CBDCs, but having passed legislation against it, I would say he's out in front. Other candidates who have done so include Vivek Ramaswamy. Here he is on the Mark Moss Show.
So I'm dead set against CBDCs. I was talking about this long before it was popular to be a talking point in political circles.
And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Here's a tweet he posted back in April. The Fed just announced it will introduce its FedNow central bank digital currency, CBDC, in July. CBDCs grease the slippery slope to financial slavery and political tyranny. I wasn't able to find a position on CBDCs from Donald Trump. If you're aware of one, please let me know in the comments. I'm hoping we get a primary debate that includes Trump, as I would love to know his position on this very important topic. And now, for that, however, I mentioned earlier, Ron DeSantis' position on the Ukraine war is at best less than clear. You have statements like this.
You have to do what's based on our interests. You can't subcontract out our interests to a foreign leader. You can't want it to go on because it'll be good for defense contractors or, globalist investors.
To me, that suggests he favors a quick and peaceful end to the conflict, and that our involvement only be based on the interests of American citizens. However, his most clearly articulated position is as follows.
So when you talk about trying to bring an end to the conflict, would you push Zelensky to make concessions to Russia, to cede land that Russia seized in its attack?
So what I would say is what the goal should be a sustainable, enduring peace in Europe, but that one that does not reward aggression.
That sounds like a forever war talking point. The statement, "we will not reward aggression," is the same as saying we will not compromise with Putin, as he's already displayed aggression. Allow me to get honest here. No country has had more instances of aggression towards sovereign nations than the United States in the past 30 years. I know, I hate to say it, but it's true. We've invaded and toppled regimes in Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, meddled in Syria, drone bombed in Pakistan, and encouraged a coup of Ukraine's democratically elected president in 2014. How's that for supporting democracy? And that's just to name a few. What's my point? Enough with the holier-than-thou rhetoric. We've all been aggressive here. If our leaders aren't willing to compromise, what are our other options? I can't see Putin losing with the current war configuration. Can you? Perhaps Ukraine can go on fighting with dollars and weapons from the West, and that's the forever war scenario. I'm sure there are people out there who would love that very profitable situation. I mean, check out the absolute glee in the eyes of Senator Lindsey Graham.
The best money we've ever spent. Thank you so much.
Best money we've ever spent, and that's our tax dollars he's spending.
As long as we help Ukraine with the weapons they need and the economic support, they will fight to the last person.
And fight to the last person? This is someone who's pretending to care about the Ukrainian people? We got to wake people up on this. The other option, as I see it, is escalation, which sounds to me like World War III, over who controls regions such as Donbass, Crimea, for a regime that puts YouTubers in jail?
Gonzalo Lira is an American-Chilean journalist who is now on the run. He actually spent 9.5 weeks in jail, in a Ukrainian jail, for free speech.
I will be sent to a prison labor camp come my court date. That's inevitable. Okay? And there won't be any suspended sentence and there won't be any mercy, all because of my YouTube videos. What higher value does a democracy have than free speech?
Sorry. No, thank you. This is not a legit, solid democracy. Democracies don't have coups. This is also not a regime that respects individual human rights. I don't know if I could vote for a candidate who won't explicitly put a realistic peace option on the table. That's probably going to require compromise. Trump, Vivek, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. have all indicated that they're open to that possibility. There's a lot of campaign left, so we'll see how it plays out. Now, after all of my analysis, do I think Ron DeSantis is the most freedom-friendly candidate in the race? If it weren't for his Ukraine position, it would be an easy yes. Why do I give him a slight edge over a candidate like Vivek Ramaswamy, who's expressed similar pro-freedom positions? Because fairly or unfairly, Vivek has yet to be tested in public office. Ron DeSantis has taken some bullets. I have all the faith that Vivek will rise to the challenge once given that opportunity. But DeSantis, having passed fiercely contested legislation, gets a few extra points. He's demonstrated that he understands the stakes of this game and is more than up for the challenge.
But victory is not easy. It requires demonstrating not just the right frame of mind, not just advocating the right policies, but it requires that you demonstrate the courage of those convictions. Because leadership in this day and age, with how powerful the left is in media and in entertainment and in bureaucracy and all these other things, leadership's not cost-free. When you step out, it could be a governor like me. It could be a mother who just goes to a school board meeting who's concerned with what's going on. They're going to come after you. They're going to attack you, and you're going to have to make those sacrifices if you want to save our country. But I think we have no other choice but to do that. After all, we believe in the founding creed of this country that our rights do not come from government. They come from the hand of Almighty God.
And that is what I'm talking about. When I hear that conviction, I feel optimism. Cheers. However, due to his possible alignment with the neocons on the Ukraine war, I'm going to have to call it a tie with Vivek Ramaswamy. Now, if DeSantis can articulate a realistic and practical path to peace, he will move firmly into the lead due to his experience and proven track record. For me to revisit this assessment, I would have to hear more about Trump's position on CBDCs. Also, I should probably mention why Vivek beats out Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in my mind. RFK Jr. is still giving the carbon-caused climate change narrative way more credence than it deserves. In fact, I believe net zero is perhaps the biggest con of all time. But that's for another video. And that's how I see it, my friends. Please leave a comment. I'd love to hear your perspective. How would you rank these candidates on freedom friendliness? Hope you enjoyed my 1 or 2 good golf swings. I've found during the course of building this channel that I get a little stir crazy in the studio, editing, filming, researching all the time. As I expand the Shadow Wreckardz team, that problem will probably resolve itself. But for now, I've found that filming some of the scenes on location helps keep me sane, and hopefully helps keep you entertained. Thanks again for your support. See you soon.